All right, ready to dive in. We've got a fascinating one this time.
Yeah, should be interesting.
Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Oh, Diamond's book. Classic.
Had to grab a copy after you mentioned it. Quite a challenge, though, huh? I mean, the scope of it.
Oh, absolutely. Sprawling. But that's Diamond for you, right? Thinks big.
Yeah.
And he really digs into this huge question about why did history unfold so differently on different continents?
Yeah, it's something you kind of take for granted, but when you actually stop and think, why did some parts of the world develop so much more stuff than others?
Right. And for a long time, the answers were pretty simplistic, even racist. But Diamond flips the script.
Yeah, he throws down the gauntlet right from the start with that story about Yali.
Yali's question, yeah, gets right to the heart of it.
For those who haven't read it, Yali's this New Guinean politician, and he asks Diamond, point blank, why is it that you white people developed so much cargo and brought it to New Guinea, but we black people had little cargo of our own? How do you even start to answer that?
Well, that's the brilliance of the book, right? Diamond doesn't shy away from these tough questions, and he doesn't settle for easy answers. He's not interested in those racist explanations we talked about.
Makes that very clear right away. This isn't about some inherent European superiority or anything like that.
Exactly. Diamond's argument is all about geography, the environment. He argues that where you were on the map, say 13,000 years ago, played a huge role in how your society developed.
So, like, some folks just got dealt a better hand of the geographic lottery.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, think about it. 13,000 years ago, some societies were already experimenting with agriculture.
Because their environment allowed for it,
Right. They had the right kind of plants and animals that could be domesticated, the right climate.
while others were still stuck in hunter-gatherer mode.
And it's not that one group was smarter or more advanced. They just had different starting points, different resources to work with.
And Diamond saying those early advantages or disadvantages had this ripple effect across history.
Oh, absolutely. It's like those dominoes. One thing leads to another. It influenced who conquered whom, who developed what technology first. It's all connected to that initial environmental hand you were dealt.
And that brings us to, I think, one of the most vivid scenes in the book, the capture of the Inca Emperor Atahualpa by Pizarro.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a clash of civilizations. Diamond really lays it out there, all the details.
For those who haven't read it, you have these two completely different worlds colliding. On one hand, you've got the Inca powerful empire, sophisticated social structures, their own impressive technologies,
And on the other, this tiny band of Spanish conquistadors.
with horses,
Yeah.
steel weapons. And let's not forget,
Germs.
right, those terms. And, well, it doesn't end well for the Inca.
Nope, not at all. And Diamond uses this event to illustrate the difference between what he calls proximate and ultimate causes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for us.
So the proximate causes of the Inca defeat are pretty clear: guns, germs, and steel. Those are the immediate things that led to their downfall.
The tools of conquest.
Exactly. But the more interesting question, the ultimate cause, is why did the Europeans have those things in the first place?
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's not enough to just look at the immediate clash. You have to zoom out and look at the, what, thousands of years of history that led up to it?
Exactly, you've got it. And that's where the story of food production comes in.
Because some societies figured out how to farm and others didn't.
Right. And Diamond argues that this one region in the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent, had this unique combination of factors that made it, well, the ideal place to kickstart civilization.
What was so special about the Fertile Crescent? From what I remember, it's not exactly a tropical paradise.
No, but it had something much more valuable: a Mediterranean climate. Wet winters, dry summers, perfect for growing certain types of grains. Plus, it had an abundance of plants and animals that were just primed for domestication.
While other places had, like, eucalyptus trees and stuff.
Huh. Right, not exactly farmer friendly. So you have these two drastically different starting points. The Fertile Crescent with its abundance, and other places with, well, different challenges.
And that difference in environment, that head start with farming, had these huge ripple effects on the development of societies.
Exactly. And it's a pretty wild story how it all unfolded. It's amazing, isn't it? How this one thing, being able to farm, it just set off this chain reaction.
Right, like a domino effect.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about having more food. It's about what that abundance allowed for.
Okay, so more food, more people. That seems pretty straightforward. But then what?
Well, think about it. You've got more people. You need new ways to organize them.
You need rules, laws.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Systems to resolve disputes, make decisions, allocate resources, all the things a complex society needs.
So basically, farming accidentally invented bureaucracy.
Huh. Well, there's a thought. Not quite. But you're not wrong. That need to manage these larger, denser populations, it laid the groundwork for more complex social structures.
From villages to chiefdoms to...
To states and empires, yeah. It was a gradual process, but the seeds were sown by those early farmers.
And here's where Diamond throws in this curveball, Germs. He argues that livestock, those seemingly harmless farm animals, they actually played a huge role in shaping history.
Right. It's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, because we tend to think of agriculture as this purely positive development.
Right, but Diamond points out that this close proximity of humans and animals, especially in Eurasia, well, it had this unintended consequence.
The evolution of some of humanity's deadliest diseases. So like those cute little lambs were actually ticking time bombs of disease.
Kind of, yeah. Think about it. People living in close quarters with animals sharing their living spaces.
Exposed to their waste.
Right. It created this perfect breeding ground for animal pathogens to make the jump to humans.
And we're not just talking about the common cold here. These were the big ones, right?
Oh, yeah. The crowd diseases, smallpox, measles, influenza.
The ones that could wipe out entire populations.
Exactly. And while these diseases were obviously devastating, they also, tragically, played a role in shaping history.
Because they gave Europeans this kind of accidental biological weapon.
It's true. When they came into contact with populations who had no immunity.
Like the Native Americans.
Right. They had no resistance to those diseases, it was.
Well, it wasn't a fair fight. Yeah. It's the heartbreaking part of history, for sure.
Absolutely. But it helps explain why the European conquest of the Americas was so swift, so devastating.
Right. Okay, so we've got guns, germs, and of course we can't forget about steel.
Right. All those things played a role.
But Diamond also talks about the power of the written word, and he links that back to the development of agriculture, too.
Absolutely. As societies got bigger, more complex.
They needed better ways to keep track of everything.
Right, exactly. Grain stores, labor, taxes. Writing emerged as this crucial tool for record keeping, communication, administration.
It's like trying to run a Fortune 500 company using sticky notes in your memory. Eventually, you need a better system.
Exactly. And that's what writing provided this way to organize these larger states, these armies, trade networks. It was huge.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got farming, leads to larger populations, leads to more complex societies, leads to the development of writing AD, all these nasty germs.
It's all connected.
It's amazing how it all ties together.
It is. Diamond does an incredible job of tracing those threads. But it's important to remember, he's not saying these are the only all-life factors at play.
Right. He acknowledges that there are exceptions. Like, what was that thing I read about the Phaistos disc?
Oh yeah, the Phaistos disc. One of those archaeological mysteries that makes you realize how much we don't know about the past.
So what is it?
Well, imagine a form of printing technology, but in 1700 BC.
Whoa, way before Gutenberg.
Way before, and it's not clear exactly what it was used for, but it suggests that people were experimenting with some pretty advanced stuff, even back then.
So they had printing presses in ancient Crete. Why wasn't everyone using them?
Right, that's the million-dollar question, and that's exactly Diamond's point. Technological advancements don't always take off, even when they seem like game changers.
Sometimes they're ignored, forgotten.
Or they just don't fit into the existing social or technological context. It's like you need the right environment for an invention to really flourish.
Makes you think about all those inventions throughout history that just never...
Never quite caught on, yeah.
And it's not enough to just invent something. It has to be adopted, integrated into society for it to have a real impact.
Right. Like, think about the QWERTY keyboard. We're still using a keyboard layout designed for typewriters over a century ago.
Because everyone knows it.
Exactly. It's not the most efficient layout, but it's so ingrained, switching to something better is tough.
I've tried those ergonomic keyboards. My typing speed just...
Thanks, yeah.
Old habits die hard. But Diamond's making a bigger point here. Sometimes the best technology doesn't win out.
It's true. It's a reminder that history isn't always a straight line of progress. But if we zoom out, look at the big picture. Why was Eurasia the ultimate winner in this technological race? Diamond argues that a few key factors tipped the scales in their favor.
So it's not Joe T about that early lead with farming. They had other advantages too.
Yeah, Eurasia's sheer size was huge. Literally, more landmass meant more people, which meant more potential for
Yeah,
innovation.
more brains coming up with new ideas.
Exactly. And because it's so large and ecologically diverse, there were more opportunities to experiment with different crops, animals, farming techniques. It's like more ingredients to work with.
So bigger buffet, basically.
Huh, I like that. But there's also the shape of the continent. Eurasia has this long east-west axis.
Which meant that crops and animals and ideas could spread easily.
Exactly. Along those similar latitudes.
Because wheat that grows well in Greece is probably going to do pretty well in a similar climate in, say, Italy or Turkey, but not necessarily if you try to move it from, like, Canada to Mexico.
Right, exactly. That north-south orientation of the Americas, it posed a bigger challenge.
Interesting.
So you have this ease of diffusion, this interconnectedness. It allowed for this incredible spread of technology and ideas across Eurasia. And that ultimately is how they got those guns, germs, and steel that toppled empires.
Hold on a sec. This whole idea of Eurasia having this, like, head start, being destined for dominance, what about the Aboriginal Australians?
Ah, good point. They're a perfect example of how our usual ideas of progress can be pretty narrow.
Because they didn't have agriculture for, what, tens of thousands of years? But they were thriving in one of the harshest environments on Earth.
Exactly. Diamond uses them to challenge those assumptions. Just because a society didn't develop, say, writing or steel plows, doesn't mean they weren't incredibly innovative.
So we've been judging them by the wrong standard.
In a way, yeah. Diamond says they had this incredibly deep understanding of their environment. They were masters of, get this, fire stick farming.
Fire stick farming. Sounds intense.
Basically, they used controlled burns to manage the landscape.
Wait, they deliberately set fires on purpose.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, right? But it was a way to shape the ecosystem to their advantage.
So how did that work?
The fires would clear out undergrowth, encourage new plants to grow, which attracted kangaroos and other game animals.
Ah, so it was a way to increase the productivity of the land without actually farming.
Exactly. It's a great example of human ingenuity, just expressed in a different way. But you're probably wondering, if they were so skilled, why didn't they adopt agriculture or other technologies from elsewhere?
Because they did have contact with outsiders, right?
Right, like those Macassan traders. They would sail over to Australia's northern coast.
And they had metal tools, boats.
Yeah, but the Aboriginal Australians, they only adopted a few of those technologies, things that fit into their existing way of life.
So it wasn't that they couldn't have adopted these new technologies, it's that they chose not to.
That's Diamond's point. It wasn't that they were backward, it's just that they had a way of life that worked for them, and they adapted selectively.
It's a good reminder that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to progress. What works in one place, in one time.
Doesn't necessarily work everywhere else.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the Fertile Crescent to the plains of North America to the Australian outback. And we've seen how geography, environment, these things played this huge role in shaping the course of history.
They're these underlying forces that we often don't even think about.
But as we've been saying, it's not the whole story.
Right. Diamond doesn't say geography is destiny. There's still room for human ingenuity, for cultural choices, for...
For just plain luck.
Absolutely. But by understanding these deeper forces, by trying to study history almost like a science, we can start to see the world with fresh eyes.
And maybe understand those patterns, those historical forces that are still shaping the world today.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
A lot to unpack.
That's what Guns, Germs, and Steel does, right? Makes you question everything.
It's a book that stays with you.
Definitely a worthwhile read. So, to everyone listening, be sure to check out Guns, Germs, and Steel. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.